The first words she heard in the darkness were not orders. They were laughter. Then a voice hissed, close to her ear, "Die now, be asterisk H," and the gate slammed shut behind her. What none of them knew, what would change everything in the next few minutes, was that the woman they had just thrown into a starving military K-9 pen was not prey. She was the handler. If you love your country and respect your soldiers, hit that subscribe button right now. The Pacific night pressed heavy against the training compound, a damp coastal fog curling through the floodlights like smoke from a slow-burning fuse. Bootsteps echoed across concrete as the newest batch of Naval Special Warfare recruits moved between drills, shoulders stiff, faces carved from exhaustion and pride. Among them walked Petty Officer Elena Cross, slight compared to most of the men, her hair pulled tight, her eyes forward, her expression unreadable. She wore the same uniform, carried the same weight, and endured the same punishment. To most of them, she was just the new girl, the one who didn't belong. Rumors followed her like shadows, that she'd been pushed through by politics, that she was someone's pet project, that she wouldn't last a week. The instructors never corrected the whispers. They let resentment ferment, let egos swell, let the wrong men believe they were untouchable. Elena heard it all and said nothing. Silence was her armor. Patience was her weapon. She had been reassigned temporarily to this unit under a sealed directive, one that never left the commanding officer's safe. Officially, she was cross-training. Unofficially, she was there to evaluate something far more dangerous than obstacle courses or live-fire drills. Character under pressure. The kind that couldn't be measured on paper. The kind that revealed itself only when no one thought they were being watched. The K-9 facility sat at the edge of the compound, separated from the barracks by a chain-link corridor and a warning sign most recruits ignored. Inside were military working dogs pulled from active rotation due to failed handlers, disciplinary holds, or extreme aggression. These animals weren't pets. They were weapons with instincts sharpened by hunger, stress, and neglect. Only certified handlers were allowed within 10 feet of the pens. Everyone knew that, which is why the idea started as a joke. It began with a handful of SEAL candidates who decided Elena needed to be tested. They called it bonding, proving she could hang. The laughter started after lights out, fueled by boredom and arrogance. One of them had the keys. Another had the nerve. They convinced themselves it would scare her, maybe make her quit. No one would get hurt. That's what they told themselves as they dragged her down the corridor, her protest drowned out by jeers and adrenaline. Elena didn't fight them. That confused them. She didn't scream either. She just watched, cataloging faces, memorizing voices, noting the way their hands shook as the pen came into view. The dogs inside were silent at first, eyes glowing low and feral. The smell of unwashed fur and old blood hung in the air. Someone shoved her forward, hard. "Die now, be asterisk TSH," one of them whispered, breath hot with cruelty. The gate slammed. The lock snapped shut, and the laughter exploded behind the fence. Inside the pen, the dogs shifted, muscles coiled, teeth flashed in the half-light. Hunger made them bold. Fear made them unpredictable. Elena stood still, heart hammering but mind razor-clear. She dropped her shoulders, softened her stance, and exhaled slow. Her hands came up, palms open, fingers relaxed. Her voice cut through the night, low and commanding, speaking a language older than words. The first dog lunged and stopped. Confusion rippled through the pack. This wasn't the scream they expected. This wasn't panic. This was control. Outside the pen, the laughter faltered. One of the men leaned closer, squinting. Another took a step back. Something was wrong. The dogs weren't attacking. They were circling, listening. Elena moved with purpose now, stepping forward, eyes locked with the alpha. Her voice dropped further, carrying authority forged through years of training, loss, and loyalty. She called the dog by a name none of them knew. The animal froze, ears twitching, tail lowering. Then it sat. Silence swallowed the pen. Panic replaced bravado on the other side of the fence. One of them fumbled with the keys, hands slick with sweat. Another started shouting orders that meant nothing. The dogs lay down, one by one, obedience rippling outward like a wave. That was when the floodlights snapped on. The compound erupted with alarms and boots. Instructors stormed the corridor, weapons raised, faces hard. The commanding officer arrived last, eyes scanning the scene before settling on Elena Cross, standing calm among the dogs like a queen among wolves. "Open the gate," he ordered. When the lock clicked free, Elena stepped out, brushing dirt from her uniform. Her gaze never left the men who had thrown her inside. They couldn't meet her eyes. They couldn't stand straight. The commanding officer didn't yell. He didn't have to. His voice was quiet, lethal. "Petty Officer Cross," he said, "report." She snapped to attention. "K-9 Handler, lead certification. Former unit attached to DevGru support operations. Temporary reassignment per your directive, sir." The color drained from their faces. They stood in formation at dawn, the ocean behind them bruised purple by the rising sun. Sleep had been stripped from their eyes, replaced by dread. Word had spread through the compound like wildfire. The new girl wasn't new. She wasn't weak. She was the reason some missions never went sideways. The invisible hand that kept teeth from throats and chaos from consuming teams in the dark. The commanding officer paced slowly in front of them, boots crunching on gravel. Elena stood off to the side, hands clasped behind her back, expression neutral. The dog sat at her heel, calm, disciplined, lethal. What happened last night, the officer said, was not a prank. It was not a test. It was a crime. No one spoke. The wind carried the distant crash of waves, steady and unforgiving. "These men," he continued, "believed they could humiliate a fellow service member. They believed they could weaponize fear and call it tradition. They were wrong." He stopped in front of the ringleader, a man built like a tank with eyes now hollow. "You put a handler in a pen with starving K9s. Do you know what that tells me?" The man swallowed hard. "It tells me you don't understand restraint. You don't understand trust. And you sure as hell don't understand loyalty." The punishments came swift and severe. Disqualifications, court-martial proceedings. Careers ended before they could begin. The compound watched as the men were escorted away, heads down, the weight of their choices finally crushing them. Elena said nothing as it happened. She didn't need to. Her power had never been loud. Later that day, she returned to the K-9 facility alone. She knelt in the dirt, checking paws, whispering praise, distributing food with careful precision. These dogs trusted her with their lives. She had earned that trust the hard way, through scars and sleepless nights, through missions where silence meant survival. An instructor approached, stopping a respectful distance away. "You could have told us who you were," he said quietly. She didn't look up. "Then you wouldn't have seen who they were." He nodded, understanding settling heavy between them. By the end of the week, Elena's reassignment was complete. She left the compound without ceremony, dogs loaded into transport. Her name spoken now with reverence instead of ridicule. The lesson she left behind lingered far longer than her presence ever could. In the military, strength isn't measured by how hard you can hit. It's measured by how much control you have when you could destroy everything in front of you and choose not to. Somewhere out there tonight, those dogs sleep full and calm. Somewhere else, a few men lie awake, haunted by the moment they realize too late that the woman they tried to break was the one holding the leash. From which part of the country are you watching this video?